is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Welcome, my friends, to another edition of the Celebrity Afterlife Report, the only show on the internet that gives you up-to-the-minute gossip about all your favorite deceased celebrities. I'm your host, the Celebrity Medium. Let's get this show on the road. Last week, I told you about New York Yankee legend and Baseball Hall of Famer Joe DiMaggio, along with former and current Yankee owner George Steinbrenner, apparently making a deal for Joe D to play for Big George's new Yankees team in the next world. From my Afterlife sources, I now have word that the deal has been completed and that Joe took the field for the Yanks on opening day. His former earthly plane wife and current love interest, Marilyn Monroe, was in the front row cheering on her man and his team. Now, this was never a rain out in the next world, so things were going perfectly. Until that is, Monroe's former boyfriend, pop artist Andy Warhol, showed up to complicate matters. I'm informed that Andy took a seat next to Marilyn and wouldn't leave, despite her asking him to several times. Other fans around them told Warhol that he should go. He was clearly upsetting his former fiancée, but Andy was stubborn and stayed put. Things came to a head around the middle of the game when Warhol produced a ring and asked Monroe to marry him, saying he couldn't live without her. My understanding is that the scene was very tense until DiMaggio, who up to this point was unaware of what was going on, came out of the dugout and confronted Warhol, telling him to get lost in no uncertain terms. Now, Joe was never a physically imposing figure, but he towered over the artist, who nevertheless tried to stand, or sit in this case, his ground. Then, as witnessed by the fans in the stands as well as those watching on TV at home, the rest of the Yankee bench came out to back up DiMaggio. Warhol finally got the message and left in a hurry, with the fans in Monroe's section of the seats clapping and jeering at him. Now, one would think that this part of the story must be over now, but if there's one thing I've learned from following goings-on in the afterlife, it's that you can never predict what's going to happen, so we will be keeping an eye on this one. Salvador Dali was one of the most famous painters of the 20th century. The Spaniard was a founder of Surrealism and was the creator of some of the most iconic works of art of all time. On the earthly plane, he was known as much for his unique look and eccentric personality as he was for his painting skill. According to my Next World sources, Dali did not stop marching to the beat of his own drummer when he transitioned to the afterlife. It made news recently in the Next World when he gave his opinions of the current Earth plane art scene to a magazine reporter. According to Salvador, the problem with modern art is that, quote, "Today it is all about the business, not so much the art. The artists are more the businessmen. They lack the madness that Dali has," unquote. In an apparent attempt to prove the last part, he then went on to announce that he was starting a new venture. Okay, brace yourselves. Salvador Dali is now the owner and proprietor of a miniature golf course. A source who has seen the course says it has the distinctive Dali touch, including holes that feature melting clocks and a giant telephone with a lobster for the handset as obstacles, both references to famous Dali artworks. I mean, far be it for him to have something as ordinary as a lighthouse, right? Dali and his wife, to whom he made many references in his art, both work at the course, handing out the golf clubs and signing autographs on the backs of scorecards for fans. Well, I know I just said it a few moments ago, but I'm going to say it again. Just when you think things in the next world can't possibly get any odder, something comes along to prove you wrong. On last week's report, I told you that Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler has been voluntarily living as a homeless man in the woods on the edge of a major afterlife city. His scalp and facial hair have gone long and scraggly, and I'm told he is barely recognizable as the Fuhrer who terrorized Europe during his reign over Germany. A Next World reporter got the scoop on Hitler's whereabouts, tracked him down, and managed to interview him, albeit briefly. Adolf was not in a chit-chatty mood, but did eventually admit his identity and tell the writer that he was attempting to atone for the terrible things he did while on the earthly plane. So that's the end of that story, right? No. When word of Hitler's current location got out, a light bulb went on over the head of deceased former television producer Aaron Spelling. Spelling, who was the force behind the Mod Squad, The Rookies, Charlie's Angels, Beverly Hills 90210, and other huge hits, decided that he was going to produce a multi-part TV documentary about the Third Reich. And who better to play the leader of the tyrannical regime than the man himself? He contacted the reporter who had talked to Hitler to get his location so he could hire him for the part. The reporter refused to provide Adolf's current residence and wrote an article about Spelling's plans. When the story ran, the public backlash was so huge and overwhelmingly negative that Spelling was forced to make a public apology for even considering having the dictator play himself. He said that the show he was planning was going to be historically accurate, and he thought that having Hitler play himself would lend authenticity to it. He went on to say that he understood the public's sensitivity to the idea and was dropping plans to produce the documentary altogether. If you haven't been a regular listener to the report, well, first off, shame on you. And secondly, I suggest you check some of the earlier shows so that you can get up to speed on the ongoing story about the feud between comedian Andy Kaufman and singer Elvis Presley, as it's a bit hard to summarize in a few sentences. The short version is that Kaufman and Presley were scheduled to have a televised wrestling match to determine whether Andy's doppelganger Tony Clifton would continue to open the live shows in which Andy has been appearing as Elvis. The update is that Kaufman and Presley did finally have the long-awaited bout on one of the Afterlife's most popular TV networks. The match was aired live so that the result couldn't leak out prematurely. According to my Next World sources, the short version is that at 38 minutes into the fight, after a lot of spirited back-and-forth action, Classy Freddie Blassie, Andy's ringside manager, interfered by hitting Presley over the head with his cane when the referee had his back turned. That caused Elvis to hit the mat, allowing Kaufman to pin him, to the jeers of most of the sold-out crowd. Kaufman then took to the microphone, taunting the crowd and proclaiming himself not only the intergender wrestling champion, as he used to call himself when he was alive, but now also the heavyweight champion of the world, as cups and other trash pelted him. Kaufman is expected to continue performing as Elvis 2 with Clifton as his opening act sometime in the next few weeks. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Celebrity Afterlife Report. Please come back next week for more up-to-the-minute gossip about all your favorite deceased celebrities. And please spread the word that the report is now available on iTunes. I am the Celebrity Medium. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.